Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha Kodesh. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Nehemiah and the first chapter. And, Nehemiah was contemporaries with Ezra, as we'll find out as we continue to read and hear. But just a quick context as to where we are right now with the book of Nehemiah is it's still during the reign of the Persian Empire, right? We know that with Cyrus, right, around 539 BC, when they took over the Babylonians, you had the Persian Empire that was the world superpower, you could say, at that time. And they carried on all the way up until the Greeks came up into power and took them down. So somewhere within that reign, right, a little bit after, with the Persians, you had from Cyrus, right, you had Cambyses, his son, right, I believe it was Cambyses II, and then you had Bardia, and then followed by Darius. And that was that same Darius, the Persian, that allowed it to go back and continue rebuilding the temple. Now, after that time, you had the son of Darius, which was Xerxes, or Ahasuerus. And this was the king during the reign of the book of Esther, which we went into as well. Okay, so now going more into the future, we have Artaxerxes I, which I believe was the son of Xerxes or Ahasuerus. So let's actually look up, let's look up Xerxes the first here. And if we click on him, so we can see here that his issue, or his children, amongst them you had Artaxerxes I, otherwise known as Longimanus. I believe that was a Greek name given to him, as it says here, allegedly because his right hand was longer than his left, and that means long-handed. Longimanus, manus meaning hand, longi, long. Anyway, they have him here within the timeline of about 465 BC to about 424 BC. So at the end of the day, when it comes to these times, most of them, if not all, are circa approximations. And so there are times when it's important to know these dates. There are times when it's good to have an approximation. And then there are other times where, it doesn't really matter. So going back to Nehemiah, right, we passed the time of Esther, right, we passed the time of Xerxes, and now we've gone into the time where we have Nehemiah here, who is the cupbearer to Artaxerxes I, which is the current emperor or king at this time. So now let's go to the book of Nehemiah, and the general story or timeline with the book of Nehemiah is the Lord giving him permission to go to Jerusalem and to complete the building of the walls. Because remember, we finished building the temple under the reign of Darius, but there were still the walls that needed to be built. Okay, and so that is basically what Nehemiah does when he goes back to Jerusalem and also tries to get the people in order. Now, this is the book of Nehemiah, chapter 1, verse 1. The words of Nehemiah, the son of Hakaliah. And it came to pass in the month Chislew, in the 20th year, as I was in Shushan the palace. Right, there you go with Shushan again, the in Persia, right? And I believe when you look into the name Nehemiah, it goes into the definition they have here, or the meaning is the Most High comforts, or Yahweh comforts, going into the Hebrew Nachamaya, where you have the Yah at the end for Yahweh, and then the Nacham going into, having compassion or consoling somebody, or in this case, comforting them. So verse 2, it says that Hanani, one of my brethren, came, he and certain men of Judah, and I asked them concerning the Jews that had escaped which were left of the captivity, and concerning Jerusalem. Escape meaning those that were able to go back. All right, it wasn't like we had to flee back. We had permission to go back. So those that were able to go back to Jerusalem, Nehemiah was asking here, what is the state? How are the people doing? What's going on? So these Hanani and right, these men of Judah had to have come from Jerusalem. Verse 3, and they said unto me, the remnant that are left of the captivity there in the province are in great affliction and reproach. The wall of Jerusalem also is broken down, and the gates thereof are burned with fire. And it came to pass, when I heard these words, that I sat down and wept, and mourned certain days, and fasted, and prayed before the God of heaven. So Nehemiah was very troubled by this, and you could see that it goes to show how much love and care, especially our people had, more so in the past, about our heritage, our customs, our land, everything, right? The things that pertain to us, it was very near and dear to us, which is why when you deal with, for example, the story of Eleazar, he rather die, right, than to defile himself and eat pork, even though they gave him the option to say, hey, just eat something else and make it look like you're eating pork. Just to even put that image out there, he refused. See, so it goes to show you just how seriously our people took our customs and heritage back then. Unfortunately, as compared to now, you know, there's a 180-degree difference. Verse 5. So Nehemiah here, upon hearing this, you know, he's very mournful, sorrowful. He's weeping and praying to the Lord, and said, I beseech thee, O Lord Yahweh, God of heaven, the great and terrible God, that keepeth covenant and mercy for them that love him and observe his commandments. Now, the terrible God is not, Nehemiah is not saying this in the sense of, oh, like, you know, you tell somebody, oh, you're a terrible person, as if to insult them. When you go into this word terrible, it says here, yara, to fear, to revere, to be afraid, right? The root word here being terror, right? Terrible, you have terror in there. And so what it means, what Nehemiah meant by that is the Most High is one to be feared. That's why he calls him great and terrible here. And says that keepeth covenant and mercy for them that love him and observe his commandments, right? Because the Lord is loyal. As the scriptures say, he is not a man that he should lie, and he is not the son of man that he should repent. So those that are loyal to the Lord, those that as it says, observe his commandments, the Lord is faithful to them. Verse 6, let thine ear now be attentive, and thine eyes open, that thou mayest hear the prayer of thy servant, which I pray before thee now, day and night, for the children of Israel thy servants. See, so as he's praying to the Lord constantly, right, day and night, he's praying to the Lord, and he's asking the Lord to hear his prayers, to have mercy, to grant him his request. It says here, and confess the sins of the children of Israel, which we have sinned against thee. Both I and my father's house have sinned. We have dealt very corruptly against thee, and have not kept the commandments, nor the statutes, nor the judgments, which thou commandest thy servant Moses. Remember, I beseech thee, the word that thou commandest thy servant Moses, saying, if ye transgress, I will scatter you among the nations. And you can read about that in Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, right? I believe it's, Deuteronomy 28. And that is Moses. The book of Deuteronomy, the bulk of it is really Moses speaking unto the children of Israel before they crossed over onto the west side of Jordan and into the promised land. Even though on the east side is still part of it, but the real core was more so on the west of it. But yeah, this was mentioned in there, right? Verse 9, but if ye turn unto me and keep my commandments and do them, though there were of you cast out onto the uttermost part of the heaven. So though you were, scattered all abroad, which was one of the curses, yet will I gather them from thence. So if you turn and you seek the Lord, you repent, even though I scattered you, I'm going to come and gather you back, and will bring them on to the place that I have chosen to set my name there, which is Israel, or Jerusalem, right? Verse 10, now these are thy servants and thy people, whom thou hast redeemed by thy great power and by thy strong hand. So, and this is a pattern that you see over and over again when you read about the prayers of, the men of the Lord, the women that trusted in the Lord. It's not like a direct selfish prayer, right? It's always putting the Lord in remembrance of either what he has said, or reminding him of who we are to him. Okay, and these things, it's like setting the tone before you, to help further your case. Verse 11, O Lord, I beseech thee, let now thine ear be attentive to the prayer of thy servant and to the prayer of thy servants. So not only to Nehemiah, but to the rest of Israel that are praying for the Lord to have mercy upon us. It says, who desired to fear thy name and prosper, I pray thee, thy servant this day, and grant him mercy in the sight of this man. So Nehemiah was praying to the Lord and asking the Lord to grant him favor, right, and prosperity and mercy, as it says, in the sight of this man, and this man being Artaxerxes the first. It says, for I was the king's cupbearer. See, so, and in the ancient world, that was an actual high role. It's not like today you hear about cupbearer, you think of like a butler, you think of somebody who's low, but to be the king's cupbearer in the ancient world was actually a very high position. You had to be a very trusted individual to have that access to the king, because a cupbearer, imagine if you were a cupbearer, especially like in the Persian Empire, and how careful they were, right? If you're at the time of Artaxerxes, you know about the history of what happened with Xerxes, where two of his guards tried to assassinate him, but Mordecai helped, and delivered him. So you know about these things. So of course there's very high security and precaution around who's close to the king and who tends to what matters. The easiest way to get to the king is a cupbearer can easily poison the king. So you would have to be very well trusted and vetted to be able to be in that position, as Nehemiah was. And so he was praying to the Lord to get favor in the sight of this king, that when he was to ask him for this request, which would come as we keep on reading, he would have, it would be in his favor. But anyway, that brings us to the end of the book of Nehemiah, the first chapter. Lord willing, this is edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha, Kodash. And until next time, Shalom.